What happens when a prince who preaches mental health awareness completely loses his mind on live television? Tonight, we're diving into one of the most shocking celebrity meltdowns ever caught on camera, when Prince Harry turned Stephen Colbert's late-night show into an absolute disaster zone. You're not going to believe how this royal train wreck unfolded, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me what you think really triggered Harry's explosive breakdown. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert was supposed to be just another routine promotional appearance. Harry had been making the rounds, discussing his latest charitable initiatives and mental health advocacy work. The producers expected a pleasant softball interview, the kind that usually helps celebrities look good while plugging their projects. What they got instead was a masterclass in how quickly things can spiral completely out of control. Stephen Colbert, known for his sharp wit but generally respectful interviewing style, welcomed Harry onto the stage with his usual charm. The audience applauded politely as Harry settled into the guest chair, flashing that practiced royal smile that had served him well through countless media appearances. Everything seemed perfectly normal in those first few moments. "So, Prince Harry, thank you for being here tonight," Colbert began, leaning back in his chair with a genuine smile. "I have to say, your work with mental health awareness has been really impressive. You've been very open about your own struggles, which takes real courage." Harry nodded, seeming comfortable and prepared. "Thank you, Stephen. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about. Mental health affects everyone regardless of background or status. We need to break down these barriers and stigmas that prevent people from getting the help they need." The response sounded rehearsed, the kind of talking points Harry had delivered dozens of times before. Colbert, being the experienced interviewer he is, decided to dig a little deeper, perhaps looking for something more authentic and personal. "That's admirable, and I think a lot of people appreciate your honesty about therapy and getting professional help," Colbert continued. "But I'm curious, when you're advocating for mental health awareness, do you ever feel like there's pressure to be the perfect spokesperson? Like you always have to have it all figured out?" The question seemed innocent enough, even thoughtful. It was the kind of nuanced inquiry that could have led to a meaningful discussion about the complexities of public advocacy. Instead, something shifted in Harry's expression. His smile flickered just for a moment, but Colbert noticed. "I think that's a rather presumptuous question, Stephen," Harry replied, his tone cooling noticeably. "I don't think anyone expects of perfection from advocates. That's rather the point of breaking stigmas, isn't it?" The audience sensed the slight tension, that awkward moment when a conversation takes an unexpected turn. Colbert, being a professional, tried to smooth things over while still maintaining the interview's momentum. "Absolutely, and I didn't mean to suggest otherwise," Colbert said diplomatically. "I was actually thinking it might be liberating in a way to be able to show that even advocates have bad days. It makes the message more relatable, don't you think?" But instead of accepting the olive branch, Harry seemed to interpret the follow-up as doubling down on criticism. His posture straightened, and there was a defensive edge creeping into his voice that hadn't been there moments before. "I'm not sure what you're trying to imply here, Stephen, but I take my advocacy work very seriously. These aren't just talking points for me. This is about helping people who are genuinely suffering." The studio audience was completely silent now, sensing that something was going wrong but not quite understanding how they'd gotten there. Colbert, clearly caught off guard by the sudden shift in Harry's demeanor, attempted another diplomatic redirect. "Of course, and that sincerity comes through in everything you do. I think what I was trying to get at is how you balance being vulnerable in your advocacy while still maintaining your privacy. That must be a difficult line to walk." Harry's jaw tightened visibly. For someone who had spent years training in media relations and public appearances, his reaction was surprisingly raw and unfiltered. The carefully constructed public persona was starting to crack in real time. "Are you questioning my authenticity?" Harry asked, leaning forward in his chair. "Because if that's what this is about, I think we need to be very clear about something. I've sacrificed more for mental health awareness than most people could imagine. I've opened up my private struggles, my family's issues, my personal trauma, all in service of helping others. Colbert looked genuinely confused at this point, glancing briefly toward his producers offstage as if seeking guidance on how to handle what was quickly becoming an uncomfortable situation. The interview had veered so far off script that everyone seemed unsure how to proceed. "Harry, I'm absolutely not questioning your authenticity," Colbert said carefully. "Your openness about your struggles has helped countless people. I was simply wondering about the personal cost of that openness, which I thought was actually a compliment to your courage." But Harry was beyond hearing nuance now. Something about the line of questioning had triggered a defensive response that seemed completely disproportionate to what had actually been said. His voice rose slightly, and his carefully maintained composure began to slip even further. "You know what, Stephen? I'm getting really tired of people like you pretending to support mental health while simultaneously trying to poke holes in the work that advocates like me are doing. It's incredibly hypocritical, and frankly, it's exactly the kind of attitude that keeps people from seeking help." The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Colbert's expression shifted from confusion to genuine concern, not just for the interview but for Harry himself, who seemed to be having some kind of breakdown. Right there on stage, the studio fell into an uncomfortable silence as Harry's accusation echoed through the room. Colbert, visibly taken aback by the sudden hostility, tried to maintain his professional composure while clearly struggling to understand how the conversation had deteriorated so quickly. "Harry, I think there might be a misunderstanding here," Colbert said slowly, his voice measured and calm. "I genuinely support mental health advocacy, and I have nothing but respect for the work you're doing. I was trying to have a thoughtful conversation about the challenges that come with being in the public eye while dealing with personal struggles." But Harry was beyond reason now. His face flushed with anger that seemed to come from somewhere, much deeper than anything Colbert had actually said. The prince leaned forward aggressively, pointing his finger at the host. "Don't patronize me, Stephen. I know exactly what you're doing. You're trying to make me look unstable, trying to undermine my credibility so you can get your little viral moment. This is exactly the kind of media manipulation that destroyed my mother, that nearly destroyed me, and that continues to harm people who are trying to make a difference." The mention of his mother sent a visible shock through the audience. This wasn't just an interview gone wrong anymore. This was a man having a very public psychological crisis. Colbert's expression shifted from professional concern to genuine human worry. "Harry, I would never try to manipulate or undermine you," Colbert said gently, his voice taking on the tone someone might use with a person in distress. "I think maybe we should take a break here. Would that help?" The suggestion of a break seemed to enrage Harry even further. He shot up from his chair, towering over Colbert, who remained seated, clearly trying not to escalate the situation further. "A break?" Harry shouted, his voice carrying clearly through the stunned studio. "So you can edit this however you want? So you can make me look even worse? I know how this works, Stephen. I've been dealing with media vultures my entire life, and I can smell the blood in the water from a mile away." The audience was completely silent now, some people looking genuinely frightened by the intensity of Harry's outburst. Security personnel near the stage began to shift nervously, clearly unsure whether they should intervene in what was still technically just an interview, albeit one that had gone horribly wrong. Colbert remained remarkably calm considering he had an increasingly unhinged royal screaming at him on live television. "Harry, please sit down. We're not editing anything out. This is live television. Everyone can see exactly what's happening here. And what they're seeing is someone who seems to be in genuine distress." "Distress?" Harry laughed bitterly, the sound harsh and unpleasant. "You want to talk about distress? Let me tell you about distress, Stephen. Distress is having your privacy invaded every single day of your life. Distress is watching your family tear itself apart while the media profits from every painful moment. Distress is trying to help people, while vultures like you pretend to be allies while actually just looking for your next gotcha moment. Colbert finally stood up, perhaps feeling too vulnerable sitting while Harry loomed over him. Harry, I understand you've been through tremendous trauma, and I have genuine empathy for that. But right now, you're attacking me for things I haven't done, and you're doing it in front of millions of people who came here to hear about your important work. My important work? Harry's voice dripped with sarcasm. You mean the work you've been trying to discredit for the past 10 minutes? The work you've been questioning and undermining with your snide little comments and your fake concern? At this point, Colbert's patience was beginning to wear thin. He had tried diplomacy, he had tried empathy, and he had tried de-escalation. Nothing was working, and Harry seemed determined to create a scene regardless of how Colbert responded. Harry, I need you to listen to me very carefully, Colbert said, his voice firm but not hostile. I have not said a single negative thing about your work. I have not questioned your authenticity. I have not tried to undermine you in any way. What I've done is ask thoughtful questions about the challenges of advocacy work, which is exactly what journalists are supposed to do. Harry's response was immediate and explosive. Journalists? He screamed, his voice cracking with rage. You're not a journalist, Stephen. You're a comedian who thinks he's clever. You're a talk show host who makes jokes about people's pain for entertainment. Don't you dare pretend you're some kind of serious interviewer when we both know you're just here for the ratings. The personal attack seemed to hit Colbert harder than anything else Harry had said. His expression hardened, and for the first time since the meltdown began, he looked genuinely angry rather than concerned. You know what, Harry? You're right about one thing. I am a comedian, and I do host a talk show. But I'm also someone who has treated you with nothing but respect since you walked onto this stage. I've given you a platform to discuss issues you care about. I've asked fair questions, and I've tried to be understanding even as you've become increasingly hostile for no apparent reason. Harry's face was now bright red, spittle flying as he continued his tirade. Fair questions? You call? Trying to make me look like a hypocrite fair questions? You call questioning my mental state on national television fair questions? This is exactly the kind of media abuse that I've been fighting against my entire adult life. I never questioned your mental state, Colbert shot back, his own voice rising now. But honestly, Harry, your behavior right now is making me genuinely concerned about your well-being. You're having a public breakdown over questions that were not only fair, but actually quite supportive of your work. The word breakdown seemed to trigger something even darker in Harry. His whole body was shaking now, whether from rage or something else entirely, and his voice dropped to a menacing whisper that somehow carried more threat than his previous shouting. You want to see a breakdown, Stephen? You want to see what real mental health struggles look like? Because I can show you what it's like to be pushed too far by people who pretend to care while they're actually trying to destroy you. The menacing whisper sent a chill through the entire studio. Security personnel were now moving closer to the stage, and Colbert instinctively took a step back. What had started as a routine interview had transformed into something genuinely frightening, with Harry appearing completely disconnected from reality. Harry, I think you need to take a moment and breathe, Colbert said, his voice steady despite the obvious tension. This conversation has gotten way out of hand, and I think we both need to step back and reset here. But Harry was beyond any possibility of resetting. His eyes had a wild, unfocused quality that suggested he was no longer fully present in the moment. When he spoke again, his voice was loud enough to make several audience members flinch. Don't you dare tell me to breathe, Stephen. Don't you dare try to manage me like I'm some kind of unstable person who can't handle a simple conversation. I came here in good faith to talk about important issues, and you've turned this into a hit job. Colbert's producer was now visible at the edge of the stage, clearly debating whether to cut to commercial or let this train wreck continue to unfold live. The host noticed the movement and made a subtle gesture indicating he wanted to try to handle the situation himself. "Harry, look around," Colbert said, gesturing to the studio audience who were watching in stunned silence. "These people came here to hear about your advocacy work. They want to support what you're doing. But right now, you're giving them a demonstration of exactly the kind of behavior that makes people hesitant to seek mental health treatment." The observation was accurate, but perhaps not the wisest thing to say to someone who was clearly having a psychological episode. Harry's reaction was immediate and explosive. "How dare you!" he screamed, his voice echoing off the studio walls. "How dare you use my own advocacy against me? How dare you weaponize mental health awareness to attack me when I'm trying to help people? This is exactly the kind of sick, twisted manipulation that I've been warning people about." Harry began pacing back and forth across the small stage area, his movements erratic and unpredictable. The audience was now visibly uncomfortable, with some people looking toward the exits as if considering whether they should leave. "You want to know what real mental health advocacy looks like, Stephen?" Harry continued, his voice cracking with emotion. "It looks like someone who's been through hell and back trying to help other people avoid that same hell. It doesn't look like some smug talk show host trying to score points by making his guests look unstable." Colbert remained remarkably composed, considering the circumstances, but his patience was clearly exhausted. "Harry, for the last time, I have not tried to make you look unstable. Your behavior is making you look unstable. I've been nothing but respectful, and you've responded by attacking me personally and professionally." "Respectful?" Harry's laugh was harsh and bitter. "You call this ambush respectful? You call trying to discredit my work respectful? You call questioning my mental state on live television respectful? This is exactly the kind of media abuse that killed my mother, and you're doing it right here, right now, with a smile on your face." The second reference to his mother's death created an even more uncomfortable atmosphere in the studio. It was clear that Harry was conflating past trauma with the present situation, unable to distinguish between legitimate media criticism and the kind of harassment his family had actually experienced. Colbert's voice became firmer, more authoritative. "Harry, I need you to stop. You're making serious accusations that are completely unfounded. I've conducted thousands of interviews, and I've never ambushed a guest or tried to discredit anyone's important work. What's happening here is not normal, and it's not okay." "Not normal?" Harry spun around to face Colbert directly, his face contorted with rage. "You want to talk about not normal? Not normal is having your entire life dissected by strangers. Not normal is having people pretend to support you while they're actually trying to tear you down. Not normal is being told you're crazy when you're the only one telling the truth." At this point, the head of security made the decision to intervene. Two large men in suits began walking toward the stage, moving slowly and non-threateningly but clearly preparing to remove Harry if necessary. Harry noticed the movement immediately, and his paranoia kicked into overdrive. "Oh, now you're calling security? Now you're trying to have me physically removed because I'm telling the truth about what you're doing? This is exactly what I'm talking about, Stephen. This is exactly the kind of institutional gaslighting that destroys people." Colbert held up a hand to pause the security team, making one last attempt to resolve the situation without physical intervention. "Harry, nobody wants to remove you, but you're having a public breakdown on live television, and it's not helping you or your cause or anyone who's watching this." "I'm not having a breakdown," Harry shouted, his voice now hoarse from the sustained outburst. "I'm having a breakthrough. I'm finally seeing you and people like you for what you really are. You're predators who feed on other people's pain, and you hide behind this fake concern and these softball questions while you're actually trying to destroy people." The accusations were becoming increasingly disconnected from reality, and Colbert finally seemed to realize that there was no reasoning with someone in Harry's current state. He turned toward his producer and nodded, giving the signal to end the interview. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we need to take a commercial break, Colbert announced to the audience, but Harry wasn't finished. Don't you dare cut away now, Harry screamed, pointing an accusatory finger at Colbert. Don't you dare try to control the narrative after what you've done here. These people deserve to see how you really treat your guests when you think you can get away with it. The security team was now on stage, approaching Harry with professional calm but obvious determination. One of them spoke quietly to Harry, trying to de-escalate the situation, but Harry turned his fury on them as well. Don't touch me, he snarled, backing away from the security personnel. I'm a guest on this show, and I have every right to defend myself against this kind of treatment. Stephen, you've shown your true colors tonight, and I hope everyone watching remembers exactly how you treated someone who came here to talk about helping people. As security gently but firmly guided Harry toward the exit, he continued his tirade, his voice growing more desperate and unhinged with each word. This is what they do to people who try to make a difference. This is how they silence voices that threaten their comfortable little narratives. Remember this moment, everyone. Remember how mental health advocates get treated when they dare to speak truth to power. The studio doors closed behind Harry and the security team, leaving Colbert standing alone on stage in front of a stunned audience. The silence stretched for several long moments before Colbert finally addressed the situation. Well, folks, that was certainly not what any of us expected tonight, he said, his voice carrying a mixture of relief and genuine sadness. I want to be clear that we invited Prince Harry here to discuss his important work, and I have nothing but respect for mental health advocacy. What you just witnessed was deeply concerning, and I hope Harry gets the support he clearly needs. The audience remained quiet, processing what they had just witnessed. Colbert continued, his tone serious and thoughtful. Mental health is indeed a critical issue, and it affects people from all walks of life. If tonight demonstrated anything, it's that we all need to be more aware of when someone might be struggling, and we need to approach these conversations with compassion and understanding. As the show finally cut to commercial, viewers were left with the image of an empty guest chair and a host who looked genuinely shaken by what had just transpired. The interview that was supposed to promote mental health awareness had instead become a stark reminder of how quickly things can spiral out of control when someone is clearly in crisis. So there you have it, one of the most shocking celebrity meltdowns ever caught on live television. What do you think really triggered Harry's explosive reaction? Was it the pressure of being in the public eye, unresolved trauma, or something else entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable celebrity stories that you won't see covered anywhere else.